And here we are on April the 16th. I'm Matt Porteous, and this is Matt Talks Back, a podcast for the North. Today, I'm really excited. This is going to be a fun podcast. There's going to be a lot of great info for many of us right now as we go through this pandemic. I have Andrew Adams on the show with me today. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Now, Andrew owns and runs Hope Farm Organics, which runs just northeast of Prince George. Now, you're up in the McGregor area, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's about 45 minutes to an hour from town, depending on road conditions, if it's winter or summer, or if a road is flooding.
Gotcha. Right. You're out in the boonies a little bit out there.
Yeah, you betcha.
Okay, so I got to ask you now, how did you get into farming and sustainable food? Not really an industry that is booming with young up-and-comers right now. So how did you get in there?
Well, this may tie into my life story a little bit. Shall I give you some life story?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think the best way to say how I got here is, kind of showing where I came from and some of the things that may have influenced me over the years, especially with a little bit of thinking back to my family's history. But anyways, I digress. I'm originally from Kansas, the southeastern corner of Kansas, which is where the prairies and the hardwood forests of the Ozarks run into one another.
Okay.
It's also a place where tornadoes happen. We had a tornado take our barn when I was 18 and throw it 2 miles down the road.
Wow.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I bet.
Anyway, so it was a small family farm that my grandparents had, and I spent a lot of time out there growing up as a kid while my mom worked as a single parent. And we had maybe 60 head of cattle. Probably at the biggest garden we had, it might have been close to half an acre or an acre. So um, it wasn't really a commercial farm by any means. It was more of a hobby farm. Like it brought in some money, but it was definitely not, anybody trying to make a living off of it.
Right.
But I grew up there, learning about food, chasing cows, riding four wheelers, jumping on hay bales, swimming, fishing, hunting, everything to do with food. And I think I was kind of a naturalist from the beginning, and I was just really fascinated with biology and the natural world. So um, when I was 10 years old, I was given a couple of different things. I had a birthday. The birthday, my mom asked me, "Do you want a television to be in your room or a telescope?" I asked for a telescope. My grandpa gave me my first 22 rifle.
Hmm.
And then I also got a handful of seeds and some potting mix. So I started some seeds. It was the first time I had started a garden myself. My like I said, my family always had a big garden. And watching the miracle of putting a seed in the soil, and then weeks later, months later, we had lots of food from it. It was pretty cool. I followed with this little seed tray in my room as the sun would come into my room, and the sun would move its gaze throughout the room like a cat. I would just kept moving this little soil flat around the room, following the light. Um, just watching these things really closely, waiting for the big surprise that they were going to provide.
Right.
So um, I went to university at Kansas State University after high school, and I wanted to work outdoors. All I knew is I wanted to be outdoors, working with nature. Um, and so I got a degree in agriculture. My major was park management and conservation.
Right.
I did a little bit of forest ranger stuff in the States, and then moved to Alaska, lived there for a few years, met a good looking French Canadian, moved to Prince George where she wanted to finish her degree, and I started working as a forest ecologist here. But within less than a year of living here, um, I saw that there was a huge issue in Canada, and in northern BC even more so. Now, I'd seen this when I lived in Alaska too, but I think I was awestruck by Alaska's beauty and remoteness. But there's a huge food security issue. And I never thought I would get back into agriculture, but I felt obligated when I moved here. I'm always interested in being self-sufficient and having this nostalgia of the way I grew up. I wanted to have that lifestyle again. But then there was a bit of a sense of urgency. And within a year of moving to Prince George, we ended up buying um, our farm, going into debt for our farm anyway.
Yeah.
We bought, our farm east of town where the land prices are cheap, the climate is difficult, way more so than Prince George.
Hmm.
We're on what's called the land class 7, which is like the worst piece of land you can get for agriculture.
Oh.
Um, or so says the government, anyways. And we're in the coldest, wettest biogeoclimatic region of the Prince George Forest District. So, we often get frost July 15th or so. Um, if we were to follow the rules, our farm should only be like basically grazing for animals, like grass that
Right.
you're not cutting it for hay because it's not dependable for hay, but some animals can eat on it. Like goats would survive here quite well,
Hmm.
but I hate goats, and I really like fresh tomatoes, and I like cantaloupes, and so I set about figuring out systems to make that work. And I'm a firm believer that if you have soil and you're very observant, you can grow food anywhere.
Okay, interesting. So, was the reason that you went into that area just the land price, or did you want to prove a point at the same time?
No, I don't want to prove a point. Everybody knows I'm pretty awesome. Uh, I it was more the price. Like, you know, um, I'll give you a little bit of a story. When I was in Alaska, and mind you, this was I moved there right before Into the Wild movie came out that Sean Penn directed.
Yeah.
Um, I was actually kind of fed up with society a little bit. My education taught me like resource extraction and environmental ethics and different issues around the world. And when I moved up there to Alaska and I saw a very pristine environment, I wanted to leave society. I wanted to move in the bush and be a hermit, live off the land, um, and be the Grizzly Adams character, I guess.
Right.
But so I met my wife when I was in the middle of nowhere near a village called Hope, Alaska, which is where we got our farm's name.
Right.
I was salmon fishing out there beside some grizzly bears with a 44 Magnum pistol on my hip in case they got a little frisky. And a good looking French, yeah, I'm an American. um, I don't carry a pistol anymore in the forest here. Um, but, anyways, uh, good looking girl comes walking through the forest, and I'm like, what is she doing out here? And she, looks at me and she said, "You have the best camping spot," in an accent that I'd never heard before,
Right.
which was a Quebec accent. And so, anyways, long story short, we fell in love. And before I moved to Prince George, and I was telling her this grand story of how I was saving money to buy remote land and live off the woods, she said, "That's beautiful and very romantic, but you're not being a part of the solution." So I decided that um, getting a semi-remote farm and being a part of the solution was a better idea.
That's the best of both worlds. You came to a nice little impasse there. That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, wow, that's an interesting little trail that you made into sustainable farming. I did notice that over on your social pages, not only are you doing farming in an area that is very tough to farm in, as the government says, but you're also doing it without a lot of machinery. You seem to try and do as much as you can hand powered. Why do you do that? And tell me a little bit about those systems. Tell me about your hand powered systems.
Yeah. So um, it started off as kind of we didn't have money for equipment,
Right.
and tools. And I recall when I was a young kid, when my mom remarried. my stepdad, who was also a farm kid in Kansas, and I watched him go out in the yard and he turned over a huge plot with a shovel and created a garden with just a shovel, like a big plot that fed our family.
Right.
And I was always so impressed by this. And this is how I learned how to grow a garden in the beginning, you know? So we set about doing that. We turned our whole front yard into a garden, about a quarter of an acre
Yeah.
by shovel. And we've got really, really heavy clay. And I'll premise this, that I used to be a power lifter years ago, and this was a hell of a workout.
I
Um,
bet.
so we have some equipment, but it's mostly just like primary tillage, just to wake the soil up in the springtime, or also like put more organic matter in the soil. But you know, we discovered that people pay to exercise, and contract work to individuals, and we've got a good group of people we've known for a few years now.
Right.
Some people are returning onto the farm, and so I give them one of my crops to work on, and that gives them like, I give them a set budget, and then they work the crop, and I teach them how to work the crop, and then on top of that, those people with the contract, I also help them grow their own crops on our farm as a certified organic crop, so they can earn a good income while learning and getting into farming, because unless you've got a background and experience, like, man, the learning curve is steep.
No doubt. And I think that is the big reason why we're not seeing a lot of young people jumping into this job either. There's not a lot of people out there that can teach these things anymore. And like you said, the learning curve is steep. You mess up once, sometimes that could be the end for your farm if you don't do it properly. So, um,
Yeah, there's a really interesting thing. This one I heard this one farmer say, a pianist will practice a song 200 times before they present it to the public. A farmer may only have 50 opportunities to grow potatoes
right,
their entire life.
right.
So you get one chance per year.
So, I mean, this is an important conversation. Then, do you are you saying that it's important maybe that people in town like me start small and maybe do some potatoes in their basement so they can learn the basics on a small scale, and then when they have the opportunity to maybe go into a bigger scale? Is this sort of a lesson you're trying to teach?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Most people learn best by failing, but some people get fed up when they fail and they don't try again. So it's best to make your failures small. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure, but like there's always a price to education. There's
Yeah,
always a tuition to be paid.
yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're going to school at a university or you're learning in your backyard. You're going to pay the cost of learning. So try to make it as cheap as possible and don't get discouraged.
Yeah, yeah.
Small triumphs like having one ripe tomato might make you want to do it again the next year.
Yeah, my wife and I did a just a small little deck garden 2 years ago, and we ended up with I think 5 cucumbers and a couple of zucchini, and it's a good feeling, and it's a lot of fun to get up every morning and go out there and see that it's grown this much too. It's a mental health
Mm.
stimulator, I think, at the same time. So, what crops are you guys growing out there right now?
So right now, the plants that we have started, like we're still under 2 feet of snow in most places.
Yeah,
Um, but the plants we grow overall on the farm is tomatoes, potatoes, onions, garlic, arugula, and a little bit of other brassica spicy kind of salad green mix. Radishes, beets, turnips, cauliflower, broccoli,
wow.
cabbage, strawberries, raspberries, rhubarb, um, and hemp. This year we're growing hemp.
I saw that, and I'm very excited about that. I think that's an important crop that's going to do big things, especially for us up here in the north. We haven't even really touched on hemp production yet and what that can do for us. Everything from oils to
Mhm.
textiles to, I mean, that hempcrete that they're coming out with is freaking amazing. So I'm very excited that you
Uh,
guys have dove into that.
50,000 uses of an organic product that does in the environment.
Yeah.
50,000 uses.
And not only that, it's also a oxygen producer. You can grow a forest of this stuff in
Yeah.
3 months, and it produces oxygen like your trees do, and you can turn them around year by year. Amazing. So,
Yeah.
how big of a crop are you doing?
So this year the hemp crop is not going to be very big. Typically, hemp is on a pretty large scale, or it's on a very small scale for like CBD production.
Right.
Um, but we're only doing 3 acres this year, and it's mostly for data collection. We're going to be trialing several different varieties on our farm, and as I said, like our farm is a really unique, challenging climate and soil type. So we want to find the best variety that works for our farm.
Yeah.
We do anticipate a harvest and a crop to sell, including oil, cracked hemp seed, and protein powder from them.
Yes.
But we will. It probably won't be huge. Like my biggest goal for this year is not necessarily to make money off of it, but it's to learn and then give that information to other farmers because uh, with the BC Hemp Corporation that just started up in Prince George, which kind of blows my mind. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a corporation that is creating a large fiber and oil processing plant in the region. I think they're going to give Canfor a run for their money, as well as the oil and gas industry. They need 350,000 acres in production in the region, which is huge.
Yeah.
So, that covers a wide range of climate and microsites. And our farm has about 3 different microsites. So we're planting in 3 different locations, 3 different soil types, and planting multiple varieties in each one to find out what works. And then we can give this data to farmers and they can be like, okay, well, I have that type of microsite. So I should go with this variety.
You
Because
are
we want to encourage the industry, man. It's going to be a game changer not only economically but environmentally for the region.
That's unreal. Most of the time in business, it's this competitive set where you don't want to give out your secrets, and here you are, basically doing the groundwork and taking the early mistakes out of people's hands. Props to you. That's awesome.
Mm. Well, I'm going to tell you a secret. Canada imports 70% of their food, and Prince George is bringing up over 97%. So um, there is no competition. maybe Costco is my competition, but um, in terms of local growers, there is no competition.
This is just about making sure that people have sustainable food in the long term.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like we're everyone does better if everyone's succeeding. You know, if there's like we've mentored several new farmers, and like the people that are working on the farm for us this year are also being mentored, and eventually, you know, they might start their own farm or like we're starting a co-op here to help people get into the industry, and then they can kind of work under me, and they have certified organic, and then they can go into our markets. Like we also sell into Vancouver.
Awesome.
um, so, you know, if every one of them succeeds, that means we all succeed.
So, you know what you are? You're the Elon Musk of the farming world. That's what you are, sir.
I would I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, now
I wouldn't go that far.
I've been following all of your socials here for quite a while, and one thing that really kind of blows my mind every time is just how scientific you get with your crops. You spend a ton of time doing spreadsheets, emailing out to other people to get more data. Speak a little bit to that. What type of data are you bringing in, and what are you tracking out
Yeah, so I'll preface this with I used to work in a biology research lab
there? Okay.
at Kansas State University when I was going to school there, and so collecting of data. Well, I mean, you can't make a good decision unless you've got lots of data points on whatever you're dealing with. And in a challenging climate, you don't want to make too many mistakes. Making the same you know, if the solar panels of a plant are covered up by smoke, they're not going to be producing energy as much as they would.
Of course. Yeah, of course. So we touched on food security in the north there. You have some pretty scary numbers on that. So we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. We saw people panic buying at the grocery stores early on in this thing, and immediately vegetables were gone, toilet paper was gone. Strangely, I don't know why that was something that everybody thought they needed to have a year's worth of. Um, and it seemed like it took a few weeks to get things under control again. And let's be honest, this pandemic is not as bad as some things could be. I mean, if we lose a supply line to Vancouver or down to Washington or down in the California area, what happens in Prince George?
Well, things do appear to be okay right now, don't they?
Hmm.
They appear to be, but this is a challenge because our system is extremely fragile. Prince George and all grocery stores across North America only have 3 days worth of food in the grocery store. So in the past, if we've had a big snowstorm in the wintertime, you'll see all of a sudden the grocery stores like clear out of produce in about a day.
Yep.
And then people email me and they're like, "What the hell is going on?" I'm like, "Well, we're extremely vulnerable. Grocery stores are just shelves. They're not warehouses.
Yeah.
And there are warehouses full of food all across North America, but those are going to be exhausted too eventually. Our biggest challenge right now is we don't have enough workers in BC, in Canada, and in the United States harvesting these crops. Like the majority of Canada's produce is coming from the San Joaquin Valley of California,
Right.
and there's some of it that comes in from northern Mexico. A little bit of lettuce mix comes in from Arizona as well as brassicas during the wintertime. And
Right.
then it moves into Southern California and then a little bit up into mid and Northern California. That's where the majority of our food comes from. These places that are having wildfire problems, COVID-19 problems, and the majority of their workers are what's called day crossers. So they cross the border every day to come into work. They're
Wow.
not showing up. There's border restrictions, and so, you have crops that are rotting in fields right now in the States. You have crops that are not being planted. Um, and, there's also like export and import restrictions from other
Yep.
places. So we're doing okay right now. If need be, we can eat all the canola that's still in storage bins
Yeah.
because of the China trade war that happened last year. But um, it'll be a big change like we're going through right now in terms of like the reality of our daily lives. Yeah.
And this only gets worse from here because let's be honest, it doesn't take much these days to do your research on this type of a topic, and it's not something that our government is looking into in any way, shape, or form. So at the end of the day, I guess the solution is up to us. What is the solution? I think it's pretty simple. People need to start growing again in their backyards. Everybody needs to have a garden in their backyards. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, besides the mental health aspects of it, you get some food. And maybe you're not the most efficient and maybe your yield is not as big as you'd like it to be, but you're reducing the pressure on a system.
Mhm.
Um, and which is extremely important. It's amazing what you can do with a standard city-sized lot. I'll tell you that. And uh, if we can reduce the pressure off the system, then it makes it easier for everybody. But everybody should have a garden. Um, our government is concerned with food security, but we've put all of our eggs in the basket of the United States, and frankly, the United States right now is a hot mess. Um, you know, they've they've got some serious problems.
Yep.
Like my home state of Kansas has more people infected than in BC, and Kansas is really small land size, really small population size, and very spread out people. What I'm saying is it's not a destination travel place.
Yeah.
And like, when the president said, this is a hoax, this is no big deal, go to work, it spread like wildfire.
Mhm.
And Kansas is the wheat state, the breadbasket of North America.
Oh no.
So, on average, these farmers are bringing in like 70 bushels of wheat per acre, and that's huge.
Yeah.
And now they're having all these issues, like supply chains are getting clogged up. People who work on tractors aren't coming to work, because it's dangerous, right?
Yeah. Well, and we're seeing a lot of those pictures and videos too. Dairy farmers dumping milk left, right, and center too because they just can't get it out of
Yep.
their farm. Yeah, it's tough times. So the solution is people growing at home. What crops should people be growing?
You know, there's two types of crops that I see. You've got your luxury crop, what makes you feel good,
Yep.
and I consider lettuce kind of luxury because, let's be honest with you, you're getting some nutrients from it, but it's not much, but it's nice to eat.
Minimal, yeah.
Um, but in your storage crops, so your calories. And this is something our farm is focused on. We grow a little bit of greens and stuff, but we're more focused on calories.
Right.
We want crops that store well, whether it's in your root cellar or if you don't have a root cellar, your crawl space under your house if it doesn't freeze. Um, onions, garlic, potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, all these things. They should be thinking about that. Um, especially like in BC. So most BC potatoes are about sold out now. If they're not, the organic potatoes in BC have been sold out since about February. We were one of the last farms in BC to have certified organic potatoes. A quarter acre can produce all the food you need for your family. You
Mhm.
you can live off of potatoes.
True story. The Irish did it for years and years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Amazing.
actually, the potato is actually responsible for the doubling of the population in Europe in an extremely short amount of time.
How did that happen?
Um, Easy crop to grow. It is one of the most nutritious and yeah, most nutritious and easy to grow crops out of all the four great staples. Like it's 4 times more nutritious per square foot than anything else we grow.
Wow. Those are crazy numbers. That's unreal. And you can do it in buckets in your basement if you want to, if you've got the right setup, can't you?
Yeah, sure. If you've got the grow op set up, you can not only grow your cannabis, but you can grow potatoes or tomatoes or whatever. It'd be a little expensive for you to grow potatoes in your basement, though. You probably want to grow a much more high value crop if you're going to be using your lights, which you can use not very expensive fluorescents or LEDs and grow your lettuce, and stuff downstairs in your basement. Um, you could grow determinate cherry tomatoes, and stuff like that.
Okay.
Um, not only provide a little bit of food for you, but it'll also it's gonna make you happy. You
Right.
know that food's gonna make you happy. When you've got some nice, delicious cherry tomatoes to go on a salad that you grew in your basement, you're gonna feel good.
Yeah, and the even the day to day chores of growing, they don't even seem like a chore. I mean, I grew a little bit of cannabis back in the day, and I also did some crops of vegetables and things too. And there's
Mm,
something exciting, and you get a lot out of seeing something grow, doing something small, and seeing
yep.
something flourish out of it. So there's definitely a mental health aspect to it too. If people want to follow along with what you guys are doing out there, how can they do that?
If you follow us along on our Instagram page or our Facebook page, that's one way to do it. So you can also check on our farm's website if you want to learn more about us. Hopefarmorganics.com. Easy to look up. That's the best way to stay in touch. If you want to learn more directly from us, we get lots of emails, but I'm warning you, it's a busy time of the year, and I don't want to be a dick, but I might not answer everybody.
And that's okay. You got things going on. That's no big deal. Great. You're also at the farmers market every weekend too, aren't you? Is that back up and open in Prince George, or have they not figured that out yet?
That's not open yet,
Okay.
and we've actually changed our model to a delivery service this year, which we've
Oh,
done in the past. We used to be more of a CSA farm, community supported agriculture.
yep.
People buy into shares in the farm and then they get it delivered. We've gone that route because we don't really think that farmers market's going to open up again this summer. And
Really?
if it does, I'm actually not sure I really want to participate. And I feel like it's too large of a risk. And I know it's an essential service, but the least amount of people and commingling that you have right now, the better. There is going to be a second wave to the pandemic.
Yep.
Pandemics usually come in three waves. So, if we have an option to reduce the risk, we're doing it. That's just plain and simple. The majority of our demographic that shops with us at the farmers market are the most vulnerable people in the population, as well as it's downtown. There's a big homeless population there as well, and the commingling of two really vulnerable populations amongst a pandemic is not a good idea.
You're very smart on that one too. My first podcast that I did actually was with a friend of mine who is a journalist from Canada that moved to China and is now living over there and actually lived through the pandemic. They're in the second wave right now, just the beginning of wave number two,
Mhm.
and this thing started for them back in October, November, December. So yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
People need to get this in their heads that this isn't going to be over by June. We're in this for the long haul, and we might be dealing with some of these social distancing things for months and months at a time. So, yeah, I think you're totally right. I think if you guys can go to that business model and you can still survive, that's the smartest way to go. One last thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap this thing up today, just for people out there that are maybe starting a crop. I mean, it's around that time of the year where you kind of want to start some seeds and things like that. Do you have any tips for people right now, just for the beginning of their little gardens?
Yeah, so most people have a problem with overwatering. Um, Once your seed pops, like your soil just needs to be moist. Once your seed pops, you don't need to be watering it constantly. If you start seeing your seedlings turn yellow, maybe think that's because you're watering too much. What happens is too much water, it diffuses your nutrients a little bit more. So your plant shows you signs that maybe it doesn't have enough nitrogen, and there might be enough nitrogen in your soil. However, you've dissolved that. You've made it harder for the plant to uptake it. So don't overwater. Seeds pop when it's warm. So if you're starting your seeds, don't put them next to your cold window where there's no insulation. Maybe stick your seed flats on top of your refrigerator or another warm spot in your house.
Right. That's a great tip. I overwater. I'm a brutal overwaterer. I care a little bit too much about my plants and regularly give them too much. It's funny. Humans are the same way. You give humans too much water, and our elements all start messing up too, and that could cause some serious problems. So it's funny.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's all about elements and minerals. So mineral salts in your body. As humans, we rely on different salts to do nerve firing for the plant. It's like building its infrastructure.
Right.
But too much water and it diffuses it, and you don't work right.
That's interesting. Very interesting. Hey, I wanted to thank you very much for joining me today here on the show. I think we got to a lot of great information, and I'm going to also post your Facebook page, your Instagram page, and I'll make sure that your website is up on this post as well. I'd like to invite you back sometime in the next few weeks, maybe once you get past some of your planting and some of the craziness, and just maybe get an update on what you guys are doing on the farm, and maybe get some more tips for people that are a little deeper into their vegetable gardens.
Absolutely, man. I'd love to be on again.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Andrew. That is Andrew Adams from Hope Farm Organics, hopefarmorganics.com. You can check out their Facebook page as well, Hope Farm Organics. I'll put it all in this post for you down below so you can go and check it out for yourself. Have yourself a great day out there, my friend, and happy growing.
Awesome. Thank you.